The wind, a restless whisper at first, tugged at the edges of Yara's worn cloak. She shifted the weight of her infant son, Kadir, nestled against her chest, his small head tucked beneath her chin. The desert stretched before them, an endless expanse of shimmering sand under the relentless sun. Each step was a battle against the growing heat and the fine grains that slipped into her sandals. But Yara walked on, her dark eyes fixed on the distant horizon, her face a mask of quiet determination. She had walked for days, weeks even, since her banishment from the tribe. Her heart ached with the memory of Tariq, her husband, his laughter echoing in the silent desert. They had married for love, a defiance of ancient tribal customs. Tariq, a weaver, a man of gentle hands and a poet's heart, was not the warrior her family had chosen for her. Their love had been a secret oasis in the harsh landscape of tribal law, but their happiness was short-lived. Tariq fell ill, a swift, cruel fever that stole him from her arms. Then came the accusations, the whispers that blamed Yara for his death, a punishment for her disobedience. The elders, swayed by her uncle Rashan's venomous words, banished her, casting her and her newborn son into the unforgiving embrace of the desert. Kadir stirred in his sleep, a small hand reaching out to grasp at the rough fabric of her cloak. Yara tightened her hold, a fierce protectiveness welling up within her. He was all she had left, a fragile flame of hope in the vast emptiness. She would reach the sanctuary, the hidden oasis her grandmother had spoken of in hushed tones, a place where the water flowed freely and the sand did not whisper of sorrow. She would reach it for Kadir, for Tariq's memory, for herself. The wind picked up, no longer a whisper, but a low growl. The sand, once shimmering, began to swirl and dance, lifted by the rising gusts. The sun, a fiery eye in the sky, became obscured by a veil of dust. Yara pulled her cloak tighter around Kadir, shielding him from the stinging sand. The storm, she knew, was coming. Prince Amir, astride his magnificent white camel, surveyed the swirling sand. The storm, a howling beast of wind and dust, had descended upon the caravan with terrifying speed. He had been scouting ahead, ensuring the path was clear when the first gusts struck, blinding him with stinging sand. He urged his camel forward, fighting against the wind's relentless push, desperate to rejoin the main body of the caravan. His crimson cloak, embroidered with the royal insignia, billowed behind him like a defiant banner against the fury of the desert. Amir's heart was heavy with concern. He carried the responsibility for the safety of everyone in the caravan, merchants, scholars, and families seeking new homes in the fertile lands beyond the desert. This journey, like many he had led, was not just about trade and travel. It was about hope. Amir, though a prince, found little joy within the palace walls. He preferred the open desert, the challenge of the elements, the camaraderie of the caravan, the satisfaction of bringing aid to remote settlements. His father, the king, worried about his son's restless spirit, but Amir could not ignore the call of the desert, the yearning to make a difference in the lives of his people. The wind roared louder, and the sand whipped around him in a dizzying frenzy. Visibility was near zero. He could barely see the ground beneath his camel's feet. Suddenly, through the swirling dust, he saw it, a dark shape huddled against the base of a towering dune. He strained his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a person, almost completely buried by the shifting sands. He dismounted quickly, the wind tearing at his cloak, and stumbled towards the figure, his boots sinking into the soft sand. As he drew closer, he saw that it was a woman, her body curled protectively around a small bundle. Her face was pale, her lips cracked and bleeding. He knelt beside her, gently brushing the sand away from her face. She didn't move. He reached for the bundle in her arms and realized it was a baby, wrapped tightly in a faded cloth. The child, too, was still and silent. Fear gripped Amir's heart. They were both near death, victims of the unforgiving desert. He could not leave them to perish. With a surge of adrenaline, Amir lifted the woman into his arms. She was light, alarmingly so. He then carefully scooped up the baby, cradling the small form close to his chest. He struggled back to his camel, the wind pushing against him, threatening to tear his precious burdens from his grasp. He secured the woman behind him, wrapping his cloak around her and the child, shielding them from the biting wind and sand. Then he mounted his camel, urging the weary animal forward, praying they would all survive the storm's relentless fury. Yara awoke slowly, her mind clouded with confusion. The roar of the wind had subsided, replaced by a gentle rustling. She was lying on soft cushions, wrapped in a warm, heavy cloak. The air smelled of spices and something sweet, like dates and honey. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim light, filtering through the woven fabric of a tent. Qadir lay beside her, still asleep, his small chest rising and falling steadily. She reached out and touched his cheek, a wave of relief washing over her. He was alive. They were both alive. A figure emerged from the shadows of the tent. It was the man who had rescued them from the storm. He was tall and strong, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wore a simple tunic and loose trousers, but the quality of the fabric and the intricate embroidery hinted at his noble status. He carried a bowl of steaming broth and a cup of water. "You are awake," he said, his voice soft and reassuring. "I am glad." Yara sat up, clutching Qadir close. She eyed the man warily, her memories of the storm and her banishment still fresh in her mind. She did not trust easily, especially not men of power and privilege. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "My name is Amir," he replied, offering her the bowl of broth. "And you are safe now." Yara hesitated, then accepted the bowl. The warmth of the broth spread through her, easing the ache in her stomach. She took a tentative sip, the rich flavors reviving her weary spirit. Qadir stirred beside her and whimpered softly. "He is hungry," Amir said, his eyes filled with concern. "Do you have milk for him?" Yara nodded, her cheeks flushing. With embarrassment, she had been so weak, so consumed by the storm, that she had not been able to nurse him. She gently lifted Qadir to her breast, and he latched on eagerly, his small hand gripping her finger. Amir watched them quietly, his gaze filled with a mixture of respect and admiration. He had never seen such strength and resilience in a woman. He had heard tales of the desert nomads, their fierce independence and unwavering spirit, but seeing it firsthand, in this young mother clinging to life, moved him deeply. "You are strong," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Yara looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his face. She saw no pity or condescension in his gaze, only genuine concern. A flicker of warmth, a tiny spark of hope, ignited within her weary heart. "I have to be," she replied, her voice catching in her throat, "for him." Amir sat across from Yara, a small fire crackling between them, casting flickering shadows on the walls of his tent. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky dusted with stars. Qadir slept soundly in Yara's arms, his small face peaceful and serene. Amir had offered her a place in his own tent, a gesture of respect and concern. He sensed her wariness, the guarded look in her eyes, and he knew that trust would not come easily. "The desert can be cruel," Amir said softly, breaking the silence. "It takes what it wants, and offers little in return." Yara nodded, her gaze fixed on the sleeping child. "It has taken much from me," she whispered. Amir hesitated, then spoke again. "I, too, have known loss," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "My mother died when I was young. The palace, for all its grandeur, felt empty without her laughter." Yara looked up at him, her eyes widening slightly. She had assumed that a prince, a man of such privilege, would have lived a life untouched by sorrow, but there was a sadness in his eyes, a depth of understanding that resonated with her own pain. "She taught me the importance of kindness," Ormir continued, his gaze softening. "She said that true strength lies not in power or wealth, but in compassion and empathy." Yara thought of Tariq, his gentle hands, his kind heart. He too had believed in the power of kindness. A tear traced a path down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. "My husband. He was a weaver," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He was kind and gentle, a man of peace. He did not deserve to die." Amir listened patiently, his heart aching for her loss. He sensed a story of injustice, a tale of hardship that went beyond the harsh realities of the desert. "Tell me your story, Yara," he said gently, "if you wish." Yara hesitated for a moment, then began to speak, her voice low and hesitant at first, then gaining strength as she recounted her forbidden love, her husband's untimely death, and the cruel accusations that led to her banishment. She spoke of her uncle Rashan, his venomous words poisoning the minds of the tribal elders. She spoke of her determination to reach the sanctuary, the hidden oasis that offered a glimmer of hope in the vast emptiness of the desert. As she spoke, Amir's anger grew. He had witnessed injustice before, the abuse of power by those who held authority. He had seen the suffering of his people, the struggles of those who lived on the fringes of society. He had dedicated his life to alleviating their pain, to bringing hope to those who had lost everything. "I will help you, Yara," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "I will help you reach the sanctuary, and I will help you find justice." Yara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She had expected pity, perhaps even disdain, but she found instead a genuine desire to help, a sense of shared purpose that resonated deep within her soul. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Amir smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He had found a purpose in this chance encounter, a reason to continue his journey, a reason to fight for what was right. He had found a kindred spirit in the heart of the desert, a woman whose strength and resilience inspired him, a woman whose story had touched his heart in a way he never thought possible. The storm had finally retreated, leaving behind a sky washed clean and vibrant. The setting sun painted the dunes in hues of orange and gold, casting long, dramatic shadows across the sand. Yara sat beside Amir, a comfortable silence settling between them. Qadir, fed and content, slept peacefully in a makeshift cradle fashioned from Amir's saddlebags. The air was still and cool, a welcome respite from the oppressive heat of the day. Yara breathed deeply, the scent of the desert after the rain filling her lungs. She watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, its last rays illuminating the distant peaks. It was a breathtaking sight, a reminder of the beauty that still existed in the world, even in the midst of hardship. "It is beautiful," she murmured, her voice soft. Amir nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "My mother used to say that the desert sunsets were a gift from the gods," he said, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness. "A reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, there is always beauty to be found." Yara thought of her own mother, her gentle hands, her warm smile. She had taught her to appreciate the small things, the beauty of a desert flower blooming. After a rare rain, the song of a bird in the early morning, she had taught her to find strength in the face of adversity, to never give up hope, even when all seemed lost. "My mother taught me the same," Yara said, a small smile playing on her lips. Amir turned to her, his eyes filled with warmth. He saw a strength in her, a resilience that belied her young age. He admired her determination, her unwavering commitment to her son, her refusal to be broken by the hardships she had endured. "You are a remarkable woman, Yara," he said, his voice sincere. Yara blushed, her gaze dropping to the sleeping child in her arms. She was not used to compliments, especially not from a prince. She had always been seen as an outsider, a rebel, a woman who defied tradition. But in Amir's eyes she saw no judgment, only respect and admiration. "I am just a mother trying to protect her son," she replied softly. Amir smiled. "That is the most important role of all," he said. They sat in silence for a while, watching the last vestiges of light fade from the sky. The stars began to appear, one by one, until the desert sky was ablaze with their brilliance. Yara had never seen so many stars, so bright and clear. It was as if the heavens had opened up, revealing their hidden treasures. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the stars," Yara said, her voice barely a whisper. "She said they were the spirits of our ancestors, watching over us." Amir listened intently, captivated by her voice, the way she spoke of her grandmother with such reverence and love. He had always been fascinated by the stories of the desert nomads, their deep connection to the land, their reverence for the natural world. "My mother told me similar stories," he said, his voice soft. "She believed that the stars held the secrets of the universe, the answers to all our questions." Yara looked up at him, her eyes shining in the starlight. For the first time since her banishment, she felt a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. She had found a kindred spirit in this unexpected place, a man who understood her, who saw her for who she truly was. As the night deepened, a sense of peace settled over them. The desert, once a symbol of hardship and loss, now felt like a sanctuary, a place of quiet contemplation and shared understanding. The shared sunset had forged a bond between them, a silent promise of hope and resilience in the face of the unknown. The caravan moved slowly across the dunes, a long line of camels and brightly colored tents snaking its way through the vast expanse of sand. The sun beat down mercilessly, but the spirits of the travelers were high. The storm had passed, and the desert, though still harsh, seemed less menacing. Amir rode at the head of the caravan, his white camel a beacon of hope against the endless horizon. He kept a watchful eye on his people, ensuring their safety and well-being. Yara and Kadir traveled with him, sheltered from the sun beneath a canopy attached to his camel. She had begun to trust Amir, his kindness and genuine concern, easing her wariness. She even found herself smiling at Kadir's gurgling laughter as he played with the tassels of Amir's cloak. Miles away, hidden amongst the jagged rocks of a desolate canyon, a pair of dark eyes watched the caravan's progress. Rashan, Yara's uncle, a man with a cruel face and a heart filled with greed, spat on the dry earth. He had heard whispers, carried on the desert wind, whispers of a prince's caravan, a woman and child rescued from the storm. He knew instantly that it was Yara, his niece, the girl he had banished, the girl who had dared to defy him. He had thought the desert would claim her, that the sand and the sun would erase her from his life forever. But she had survived, and now she traveled with a prince, a man of power and influence. Rashan's fingers tightened around the hilt of his dagger. He had unfinished business with Yara. She possessed something he desperately wanted, something that could bring him great wealth and power. He had accused her of stealing it, of betraying the tribe, but it was a lie, a fabrication designed to discredit her, to justify her banishment. He had to get it back, and he would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. He gestured to his men, a group of hardened bandits, their faces scarred by the sun and the violence of their lives. They gathered around him, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Rashan outlined his plan, his voice low and menacing. He would ambush the caravan, capture Yara, and reclaim what was rightfully his. He would have his revenge, and he would become the most powerful man in the desert. As the caravan continued its journey, unaware of the danger lurking on the horizon, a shadow fell across the land. The whispers of the wind carried a message of impending doom, a warning that the desert's tranquility was about to be shattered. The stage was set for a confrontation, a clash between good and evil, between a prince's compassion and a bandit's greed. The fate of Yara, Amir, and the entire caravan hung precariously in the balance, suspended between the hope of a new dawn and the encroaching darkness of Rashan's vengeance. The midday sun beat down upon the caravan, turning the sand into a shimmering expanse of gold. The camels plodded steadily forward, their rhythmic steps a soothing lullaby in the quiet desert. Amir, riding slightly ahead of the main group, scanned the horizon, his hand shading his eyes. He felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched, but dismissed it as the desert playing tricks on his mind. Suddenly, a shout pierced the air, followed by a flurry of movement on a nearby ridge. A group of men, their faces masked by scarves, emerged from behind the rocks, their swords glinting in the sunlight. They charged down the slope, their horses kicking up clouds of dust, their war cries echoing across the dunes. Chaos erupted. The caravan's guards, startled by the sudden attack, scrambled to defend themselves. Camels bucked and shrieked, their burdens scattering across the sand. Women and children screamed in terror, seeking shelter behind the overturned carts. Amir, his heart pounding in his chest, drew his sword and spurred his camel forward, determined to protect his people. The bandits, led by a tall, imposing figure with a cruel sneer on his face, swept through the caravan like a whirlwind of destruction. They slashed at the guards, their swords finding flesh and bone. They overturned carts, looted packs, and terrorized the fleeing families. Amir fought bravely, his sword flashing in the sunlight, but he was outnumbered, outmatched. Rashan, his dark eyes burning with hatred, rode directly towards Amir, his sword raised high. He recognized the prince's crimson cloak, the symbol of royal authority. He knew that capturing Amir would give him even greater leverage. "You!" Rashan shouted, his voice laced with venom. "Hand over the girl and the map, and you may yet live." Amir, recognizing the malice in the bandit leader's eyes, understood instantly. This was not a random attack. This was about Yara. He saw her emerge from behind a cart, her eyes wide with fear, Qadir clutched tightly in her arms. "Never!" Amir shouted back, his voice ringing with defiance. He would not surrender Yara to this ruthless bandit, no matter the cost. Rashan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Then you will die along with your precious caravan." He charged towards Amir, his sword whistling through the air. Amir parried the blow, the force of the impact jarring his arm. He knew he couldn't hold off the bandits for long. They were too many, too strong. He had to protect Yara to find a way to escape. As the battle raged around them, Yara watched in horror, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew instinctively that this attack was connected to her past, to the secrets she carried. She saw Amir fighting bravely, defending her and her son, and a wave of gratitude washed over her. She had to do something, to help him, to protect him. But what could she do? She was just a woman, alone in the desert, with a baby in her arms. She closed her eyes, a silent prayer escaping her lips. She prayed for a miracle, for a way out of this nightmare. The world swayed, a dizzying blur of sand and sky. Yara's head throbbed, and her arms ached from clutching Qadir. She blinked, her vision slowly clearing. She was tied to a wooden post, the rough rope biting into her wrists. Qadir whimpered softly beside her, also bound, but thankfully unharmed. They were surrounded by rough-looking men, their faces hidden by scarves, their eyes glinting with malice. The desert stretched around them, an endless expanse of sand under the relentless sun. They were captives. Amir was tied to a post a few feet away, his crimson cloak torn and dusty, his face bruised and bleeding. He met Yara's gaze, his eyes filled with concern. He struggled against his bonds, but the ropes held firm. Rashan, his face contorted in a sneer, stepped forward. He circled Yara and Kadir, his eyes raking over them like a hawk eyeing its prey. "Well, well, niece," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Fancy meeting you here. I thought the desert had claimed you." Yara glared at him, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You thought wrong," she spat. Rashan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You always were a stubborn one," he said, "just like your mother. Always defying tradition, always challenging authority." He reached out and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Where is it?" he hissed. "Where is the map?" Yara's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what he was talking about. The necklace her grandmother had given her, the necklace that held the secret to the hidden wells. The necklace Rashan had accused her of stealing, the lie that had led to her banishment. "I don't have any map," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Rashan's grip tightened, his fingers digging into her skin. "Don't lie to me, girl," he snarled. "I know you have it. Give it to me, and I might just let you and your brat live." Yara closed her eyes, a wave of fear washing over her. She couldn't give him the necklace. It was more than just a map to hidden wells. It was her heritage, her connection to her ancestors, the key to her tribe's survival. She would protect it, even if it cost her her life. Amir watched the exchange, his anger growing. He recognized the cruelty in Rashan's eyes, the same cruelty he had seen in the eyes of corrupt officials and greedy merchants. He knew that Yara was in grave danger. He had to do something to protect her, to find a way to escape. "She doesn't have any map," Amir said, his voice firm. "Leave her alone." Rashan turned to him, his eyes narrowing. "And who are you to interfere?" he sneered. "I am Prince Amir," Amir replied, his voice ringing with authority. "And I will not stand by while you terrorize innocent people." Rashan laughed, a mocking sound. "A prince, are you?" he said. "Well, your highness, I'm afraid your title means nothing out here in the desert. Out here I am the law." He gestured to his men. "Search them," he ordered. "Find the map, and if they resist, kill them." The bandits moved forward, their hands reaching for Yara and Amir. Yara's heart sank. She was trapped with no hope of escape. She looked at Kadir, his small face pale and frightened, and a wave of despair washed over her. She had failed him. She had failed to protect him. Amir, his eyes locked on Yara's, felt a surge of protectiveness. He would not let them harm her. He would not let them harm her son. He would find a way out of this, a way to save them all. He just had to think, to plan, to wait for the right moment. The desert sun beat down upon them, a silent witness to their plight, as the shadows of their captors stretched across the sand, a grim reminder of the danger they faced. The desert night was cold, a stark contrast to the scorching heat of the day. Yara shivered, pulling Kadir closer, trying to warm him with her body. They were still tied to the posts, the rough rope chafing against their skin. Amir was beside her, his head slumped against his chest, his breathing shallow. The bandits were huddled around a small fire, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the night. Rashan was pacing back and forth, his face a mask of frustration. He had searched them thoroughly, but he hadn't found the map. Yara watched him, her mind racing. She had to find a way to escape, to protect Kadir, to warn Amir. She knew that Rashan wouldn't hesitate to kill them if he didn't get what he wanted. She glanced at the necklace hidden beneath her tattered cloak, the smooth beads cool against her skin. It wasn't a map in the traditional sense. It was a coded message, a series of beads representing the locations of secret wells passed down through generations of her tribe. Rashan, blinded by greed, didn't understand its true value. He saw only the potential for wealth, the possibility of controlling the desert's precious water. Amir stirred beside her, his eyes flickering open. He looked at her, a silent question in his gaze. Yara leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not a map," she said. "It's a necklace. My grandmother gave it to me. It tells the location of the hidden wells." Amir's eyes widened in understanding. He had heard tales of the nomadic tribes and their secret knowledge of the desert. He realized that Yara possessed something far more valuable than a simple map. She held the key to survival in this harsh land. "He doesn't understand," Yara continued, her voice trembling slightly. "He thinks it will lead him to gold and riches. He doesn't know its true value." Amir thought quickly. He had to find a way to use this information to their advantage, to trick Rashan, to escape. "We can use this," he whispered, his voice filled with a newfound hope. "We can trick him. We can lead him to a false oasis, a place where the water is an illusion." Yara's eyes lit up. She knew exactly the place he was talking about. A sinkhole, miles from their current location, disguised by a shimmering mirage. It was a dangerous place, a place where the unwary could easily perish. "The shifting sands," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It looks like an oasis, but it's a trap." Amir nodded. "We'll lead him there," he said, his voice firm. "We'll make him believe it's the location of the hidden wells." They spent the rest of the night whispering, planning their escape, their voices barely audible above the crackling fire and the snores of the bandits. They knew it was a risky plan, but it was their only chance. As the first rays of dawn painted the eastern sky, a glimmer of hope flickered in their hearts. They would fight for their freedom, for their survival, for the future of their people. They would use their knowledge of the desert, their cunning, and their courage to outwit their captors and reclaim their destiny. Amir waited until the bandit's snores grew loud and rhythmic. He tested his bonds, straining against the rough rope, but it held firm. He glanced at Yara, her face pale in the moonlight. Qadir nestled against her, his small breath soft and even. He knew he had to act quickly before Rashan discovered their plan. He had to find allies amongst the captured caravan members. He scanned the faces of the other prisoners, looking for a sign of defiance, a spark of hope. He spotted a group of men huddled together, their faces grim, their eyes filled with a quiet anger. He recognized them as guards from the caravan, loyal men who had fought bravely against the bandits. He caught the eye of one of them, a sturdy man with a weathered face and a determined set to his jaw. The man, whose name was Omar, had served in the Royal Guard for many years and had accompanied Amir on several previous expeditions. He was a man of few words, but his loyalty was unwavering. Amir coughed softly, catching Omar's attention. He tilted his head slightly towards Rashan and his men, then towards Yara and Qadir. Omar understood instantly. He knew what Amir was asking of him. He nodded subtly, his eyes conveying a message of solidarity and resolve. Amir then looked towards two young women sitting near the fire, their faces streaked with tears. He recognized them as sisters, skilled healers who had joined the caravan to offer their services to remote villages. They were known for their courage and compassion, their willingness to help those in need. He caught the eye of the older, his sister, whose name was Aliyah. He gestured towards the ropes binding his wrists, then towards the sleeping bandits. Aliyah, despite her fear, understood his plea. She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Throughout the remaining hours of darkness, Amir continued his silent communication, gathering a small but dedicated group of allies. He appealed to their sense of justice, their loyalty to the crown, their compassion for Yara and Qadir. He reminded them of the values that bound them together, the values of courage, honor, and resilience. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the eastern sky in hues of pink and orange. Amir's small band of rebels was ready. They had a plan, a desperate gamble to regain their freedom and bring Rashan to justice. Omar and the other guards, armed with stones and broken pieces of wood, would create a diversion, attacking the bandits while they were still drowsy from sleep. Aliyah and her sister, using their knowledge of herbs and medicinal plants, had prepared a concoction that would induce drowsiness to be slipped into the bandits' water supply. Yara, with her knowledge of the desert, would lead them to the shifting sands, the false oasis that would be Rashan's undoing. Amir looked at Yara, her eyes shining with a newfound determination. He saw a strength in her, a resilience that inspired him. He knew that together they had a chance. He squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise of hope and solidarity. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and in the heart of the desert, a small flame of resistance flickered, ready to ignite into a blaze of defiance. Yara, freed from her bonds by Aliyah's quick work with a hidden knife, moved with a newfound purpose. She held Qadir close, his small hand gripping her tightly. The plan was in motion. The caravan guards, led by Omar, created a diversion, their shouts and the clatter of makeshift weapons echoing through the camp. The bandits, startled awake, stumbled from their sleeping mats, confused and disoriented. Aliyah and her sister moved swiftly among them, offering cups of water laced with their potent sleeping draught. Several bandits, already groggy from sleep, drank greedily, unaware of the hidden danger. Rashan, roused by the commotion, emerged from his tent, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. He saw the guards fighting, the other captives stirring, and a sense of unease washed over him. He sensed a trap, but he couldn't pinpoint the source of the danger. "What's happening here?" he roared, his voice laced with anger. Yara stepped forward, her eyes meeting his gaze. She held the necklace, aloft, its beads glinting in the early morning light. "I've decided to cooperate," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'll lead you to the hidden oasis, but you must release Amir and the others. They are innocent." Rashan's eyes widened. He hadn't expected her to surrender so easily. He hesitated, his mind racing. He still didn't trust her. But the lure of the hidden wells, the promise of untold riches, was too strong to resist. "Very well," he said, his voice gruff. "Release the prince and the others. But if this is a trick, girl, you'll regret it." Amir, freed from his bonds, stood beside Yara, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. He gave her a reassuring nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. Yara led the way, her steps sure and confident. She knew the desert intimately, its hidden paths and treacherous illusions. She led them away from the camp, towards the shifting sands, the false oasis that shimmered on the horizon. Rashan and his men followed, their eyes fixed on the promise of water, their minds clouded by greed and the lingering effects of the sleeping draught. Several of the bandits stumbled and swayed, their movements sluggish and uncoordinated. As they approached the shifting sands, the mirage grew stronger, the illusion of water more vivid. Rashan's eyes gleamed with excitement. He could almost taste the cool, refreshing water, could almost feel the relief from the desert's oppressive heat. "There it is," he exclaimed, his voice filled with triumph. "The hidden oasis. We're rich." He urged his horse forward, eager to reach the promised water. His men followed, their thirst overriding their caution. Yara and Amir exchanged a quick glance, a silent acknowledgement of their plan's success. They had lured Rashan into their trap. The ground beneath the horses' hooves began to soften, the sand giving way beneath their weight. Rashan, still blinded by greed, didn't notice the change, didn't realize the danger he was in. He rode straight towards the shimmering mirage, his horse sinking deeper into the treacherous sand. Yara stopped, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as Rashan and his men rode towards their doom, their shouts of triumph turning into cries of alarm as the ground beneath them collapsed, swallowing them into the depths of the shifting sands. The false oasis, the shimmering mirage, had claimed its victims. The wind whipped Yara's hair across her face as she led the way, Qadir secure in her arms. The desert stretched before them, a vast expanse of shimmering sand under the relentless sun. Behind her, Rashan and his men followed, their horses, hooves kicking up small clouds of dust. The mirage of the shifting sands shimmered on the horizon, a deceptive promise of water in the heart of the desolate landscape. Yara knew every inch of this terrain. She had learned the desert's secrets from her grandmother, the ancient tales of hidden wells and treacherous illusions. She knew the dangers of the shifting sands, the sinkhole disguised as an oasis, a place where the unwary could easily perish. She glanced back at Amir, who rode close behind, his eyes fixed on her, a silent understanding passing between them. He trusted her knowledge of the desert, her plan to outwit their captors. Rashan, his face flushed with excitement, urged his horse forward. The closer they got to the shifting sands, the more vivid the mirage became. The shimmering water, the lush green vegetation, the promise of relief from the desert's oppressive heat. It was a powerful illusion, one that could easily deceive even the most experienced traveler. Rashan, blinded by greed, saw only the fulfillment of his desires, the riches he believed awaited him at the hidden oasis. "Faster!" he shouted to his men, his voice hoarse with anticipation. "We're almost there!" His men, weary from the journey and still groggy from the sleeping draught, struggled to keep up. Several of them stumbled and swayed in their saddles, their movements sluggish and uncoordinated. They were easy prey for the desert's treacherous illusions. Yara slowed her pace, allowing Rashan and his men to get ahead. She needed them, to be close to the sinkhole before the trap was sprung. She glanced back at Amir, who nodded subtly, his eyes conveying a message of caution and resolve. He rode beside her, his hand resting protectively on her arm. The ground beneath the horses' hooves began to soften, the sand giving way beneath their weight. Rashan, still focused on the shimmering mirage, didn't notice the change, didn't realize the danger he was in. He rode straight towards the illusion, his horse sinking deeper into the treacherous sand. "Something's wrong," one of the bandits muttered, his voice filled with unease. "The ground. It's soft." But it was too late. The ground beneath them collapsed, the sand giving way like water. Rashan's horse shrieked in terror as it plunged into the sinkhole, dragging its rider with it. The other bandits, caught off guard, followed, their cries of alarm echoing through the desert air. Yara and Amir pulled their camels to a halt, watching in stunned silence as the shifting sands claimed its victims. The mirage shimmered and danced, a deceptive veil over the deadly trap. The desert, once again, had shown its power, its ability to both nurture and destroy. Yara closed her eyes, a silent prayer escaping her lips, a prayer for those who had perished, a prayer of gratitude for their own survival. The desert had claimed its due, and they were free. The shifting sands shimmered before them, a tantalizing illusion of water and lush greenery. Rashan, his eyes gleaming with avarice, spurred his horse onward, convinced he was moments away from untold riches. His men, still drowsy from the drugged water, followed blindly, their horses struggling in the increasingly soft sand. Yara and Amir, mounted on Amir's sturdy camel, hung back, watching the scene unfold. Yara's heart pounded in her chest. This was the most dangerous part of their plan. She had to time it perfectly. She waited until Rashan and his men were near the center of the shimmering mirage, the ground beneath them barely holding. "Stop!" she cried, her voice ringing out across the desert. "This is a trick. There is no oasis. It's the shifting sands." Rashan, startled by her sudden outburst, reined in his horse. He stared at her, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What are you talking about, girl?" he snarled. "This is the oasis. I can see the water." Yara pointed to the ground beneath his horse's hooves. "Look," she shouted. "The sand is sinking. This is a trap." Rashan looked down, and for the first time he saw the truth. The ground beneath his horse was indeed sinking, the sand giving way like water. Fear flickered in his eyes, replacing the greed that had consumed him. "It's a lie," he shouted, his voice filled with panic. "She's lying." But it was too late. The ground beneath his horse collapsed, the sand swallowing the animal whole. Rashan screamed as he plunged into the sinkhole, his cries echoing through the desert air. His men, witnessing their leader's demise, panicked. Their horses, already struggling in the soft sand, lost their footing and tumbled into the sinkhole, their riders screaming in terror. The shifting sands claimed its victims quickly and silently. The shimmering mirage, the deceptive promise of water, remained undisturbed, a silent testament to the desert's power. Yara watched, her heart heavy with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. She had avenged her husband's death, had exposed her uncle's treachery, but at a terrible cost. Many lives had been lost, swallowed by the desert's unforgiving embrace. Amir reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "It's over," he said softly. "You're safe now." Yara looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. He had believed in her, had trusted her plan, had risked his own life to protect her and her son. She squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory, their shared loss. The desert stretched around them, vast and silent, a testament to their resilience, their courage, their unwavering determination to survive. The trap had been sprung, and they had emerged victorious, but the scars of the battle, the memories of the fallen, would remain with them forever. The earth trembled beneath their feet. The shifting sands, a deceptive mirage of shimmering water, began to churn and swirl. Rashan, his eyes wide with terror, realized too late that he had been tricked. The ground beneath his horse gave way, and he plunged into the sinkhole, his cries of alarm swallowed by the shifting sands. His men, caught in the cascading sand, followed him into the abyss, their screams echoing briefly before being silenced by the desert's embrace. Yara watched, her heart pounding in her chest, a mixture of triumph and sorrow swirling within her. Rashan, the man who had caused her so much pain, was gone. His reign of terror was over, but the cost of victory was heavy. Lives had been lost, swallowed by the unforgiving desert. Amir stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. He, too, watched the shifting sands settle, the deceptive mirage fading into the harsh reality of the desert. He understood the weight of Yara's emotions, the conflicting feelings of relief and grief. "It's over," he said softly, his voice filled with compassion. "He can't hurt you anymore." Yara nodded, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Amir, her eyes filled with gratitude. He had believed in her, had trusted her plan, had risked his own life to protect her and Qadir. She leaned against him, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. Qadir, undisturbed by the chaos, slept peacefully in her arms. The remaining members of the caravan, freed from their captors, gathered around them, their faces a mixture of awe and gratitude. They had witnessed Yara's courage, her cunning, her intimate knowledge of the desert. They had seen her outwit a ruthless bandit, a man who had terrorized their lives for far too long. Omar, the loyal caravan guard, approached Yara, his eyes filled with respect. "You saved us," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You saved us all." Yara smiled weakly, her strength returning. "We saved each other," she replied, her gaze meeting Amir's. "Together." The desert stretched around, Them, vast and silent, a testament to their resilience, their courage, their unwavering determination to survive. The shifting sands, now still and silent, held the secrets of the fallen, a grim reminder of the cost of victory. But the sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the dunes, a promise of a new day, a new beginning. The desert had claimed its due, but life, like the persistent desert flowers that bloomed after a rare rain, would find a way to flourish once more. The caravan, now free from Rashan's shadow, continued its journey. The atmosphere was lighter, a sense of relief palpable. Amongst the travelers, Amir, having witnessed Yara's bravery and resourcefulness, realized the true value of her knowledge. He knew that her understanding of the desert, her ability to locate hidden water sources, could be invaluable to his kingdom, a land often plagued by drought. As they approached the city, Amir turned to Yara, his eyes filled with admiration and respect. "Yara," he began, his voice sincere, "your knowledge of the desert, of the hidden wells, is a gift. It could save countless lives in my kingdom. I offer you a place at court, a position of honor, where you can share your wisdom and help us thrive." Yara considered his offer. She had always been a nomad, her life intertwined with the rhythms of the desert. The idea of living in a city, within the confines of a palace, felt foreign and daunting, but she also saw the opportunity to help her people, to ensure their survival in the face of increasing hardship. "I will accept your offer, Amir," she said, her voice firm. "But on one condition." Amir nodded, encouraging her to continue. "My tribe, they are suffering. They need help. They need access to water, to resources. If I am to help your kingdom, I must also be able to help my people." Amir smiled, his heart warmed by her compassion and loyalty. He had seen her strength, her resilience, her unwavering determination to protect her son and her people. He recognized in her a true leader, a woman of integrity and wisdom. "It shall be done," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "I will send aid to your tribe. I will ensure they have the resources they need to thrive." Yara smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She had found a place where she could use her knowledge, her skills, to make a difference in the world. She had found a leader who valued her contributions, who saw her not as an outsider, but as an ally, a partner in a shared mission. As they rode towards the city gates, a new understanding blossomed between them. It was more than just respect, more than just gratitude. It was a connection forged in the heart of the desert, a bond of shared experience, shared values, shared hopes for the future. Amir looked at Yara, her face radiant in the setting sun, Kadir sleeping peacefully in her arms, and he felt a stirring in his heart, a feeling he hadn't experienced before. It was a feeling of hope, of possibility, of a future where their destinies, once separate and distinct, were now intertwined, woven together like the threads of a precious tapestry. The desert, once a symbol of hardship and loss, had brought them together, a gift of water, a promise of love blooming in the most unexpected of places. Years passed. Yara, once a lonely nomad facing banishment, became a respected figure in Amir's court. Her knowledge of the desert's hidden wells transformed the kingdom, bringing an end to the cycles of drought that had plagued the land for generations. She taught the city folk the ways of the desert, the wisdom of conservation, the importance of respecting the delicate balance of nature. They, in turn, shared their knowledge of agriculture, of engineering, of medicine, enriching the lives of the nomadic tribes. Amir, true to his word, had sent aid to Yara's tribe, providing them with food, water, and resources. He had also launched an investigation into Rashan's crimes, exposing his corruption and restoring Yara's honor within the tribe. She was welcomed back, not as an outcast, but as a hero, a leader who had brought prosperity and hope to her people. Kadir, no longer a fragile infant cradled in his mother's arms, grew into a strong and intelligent young man, learning the ways of both the desert and the city. He became a bridge between the two cultures, a symbol of the unity that Yara and Amir had forged, and Amir and Yara, their bond, forged in the heart of the desert, deepened with time. The respect and admiration they felt for each other blossomed into love, a love as vast and enduring as the desert itself. They ruled together, not as prince and advisor, but as equals, their strengths complementing each other, their shared vision guiding their kingdom towards a brighter future. Their story became a legend, whispered around campfires and sung by desert bards. The prince who lifted a dying mother and child from the sandstorm, the nomad girl whose knowledge saved a kingdom, the love that blossomed in the most unlikely of places. It was a tale of hope, of resilience, of the power of compassion to overcome adversity. It was a story that reminded people that even in the harshest landscapes, even in the face of despair, there is always the possibility of redemption, of renewal, of love. The desert, once a symbol of hardship and separation, became a symbol of unity, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The legend of Yara and Amir, born of the sand, lived on, inspiring generations to come.